Well, hello and welcome to this week's episode that I want to start with a question. When you're in a conversation with someone and it gets quiet, do you immediately feel compelled to jump in, to say something? When you get onto an elevator and there's other people, do you strike up a conversation? Do you say hello? Do you talk about the weather? Or do you just allow the silence? So the question is, uncomfortable silence or power pause, right? That's what I'm calling it. There is so much power in a pregnant pause if you know how to allow it to actually be there. Now, anyone who is a storyteller, a salesman, someone who speaks professionally for a living, you're well aware of the power of the pregnant pause. We pause for effect. We pause to really drive a point home. When you're selling something, you don't fill that space. You just let it sit because you're hoping it's going to inspire the other person to fill it by saying, yes, I'll do whatever it is you're trying to make them do. So let's talk about why we feel compelled to fill an awkward silence, and how can you transform an awkward silence into a power pause. So the first thing is awareness. You have to be aware. Some people talk a lot when they're nervous, when they're around people they don't know, if they're in a conversation with someone who has power over them, a boss, whomever, in the beginning of a relationship. So only you know you. And don't worry, I'm going to give you a little downloadable step-by-step sort of cheat sheet. So you'll have the steps to how to transform this for yourself if you're someone who feels compelled to fill the pregnant pause. So you first have to get real with who you are, right? Are you a talker or not? And then move into what happens. Let's analyze. What happens when we fill a pregnant pause? Well, a lot of times you say things you might not mean. You agree to things you might not want to do. Say things that aren't true for you. Someone may ask you to do something, and instead of just letting it sit, you may fill it by saying yes, rather than, I need to think about that. Let me check my calendar. So there's something very undermining of our own power when we feel compelled. How do you get comfortable with that pause? Part of it is changing your mind about it, right? Seeing that there actually is a way to interact with someone. You're not 100% responsible for what happens in that conversation, right? You're only 50% responsible for that conversation. So I want you to try it out. What would it feel like if you were in a conversation and you just allowed the pregnant pause? Or you asked a question. What I find with some of my clients, they'll ask a question, and then if the person hesitates, they interpret that to mean the question was rude, the person's pissed, something's wrong, and they'll either try to take it back like, if that was too personal, don't worry about it, or if you don't want to do it, it's okay. Like all of this over-functioning in conversations. The same way many of us overfunction in relationships and in life. So can you imagine for you, what would it be like if you were able to not fill the pregnant pause? What do you think would happen? And the thing is, magical things happen. You have no idea what could happen if you're endlessly filling that space. When you become empowered within yourself, you can speak slowly. You can be patient for someone's answer. You can wait. You can be comfortable in the silence. Because that is a part of a relationship, is being able to be fully relaxed with each other. So those are really two different things, though. I'm talking about feeling anxious and filling that space. So I'm actually going to challenge you to do an experiment And for the next, let's say 2 days, I want you to be really mindful of every time, whether you're in a meeting at work, whether it's with a friend, whatever it is that you're doing, that there is a silence and you feel anxious. And from that anxiety, normally you would feel it. What would happen if you just allowed yourself not to? If you just had faith, let the chips fall where they may. You might be shocked that other people will pick up the slack in the conversation or not. And perhaps a power pause is okay. And if you are anxious to fill the pregnant pause, you're definitely not, or you haven't yet, mastered the art of powerfully speaking. Because when you're speaking powerfully, you have to be okay with the pause. And in fact, you use the pause to make your point, to allow what you've said to land. When I first started doing speaking gigs like 10 years ago, I was nervous. And so, I would have jokes that I was going to tell in the middle, and I would just keep stepping on my own joke. And I remember one of my friends, Linda Laundra, had said to me at my first big speaking gig, and then it was like, I don't know, there were 900 people, and I was like losing my mind. I was at Unity in New York City at Symphony Space. And David and Linda, so Linda and her husband, are really good old friends of mine, and they were there, and he was filming it for me. And I said to her afterwards, I really want you to be brutally honest with how I could have done better. Because she was like, you did a great job, blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, but how could it have been better? And she said, you were afraid to let there be a break. She's like, Terri, you had all these funny things that you were saying, but you didn't let the joke land. You said it and then stepped directly on top of it. So maybe 5 people got it, but 895 didn't. And I was like, But I appreciated her honesty because it made me start really looking at this within myself. And when we're talking about filling space like that, there's also a boundary issue, a boundary element to that. The over-responsibility of that you're responsible for the people in the elevator feeling comfortable, right? That's like a boundary issue because you're not responsible for the people in the elevator feeling comfortable. And the truth is, you assume you know how people feel, and the reality is you don't. So part of this little experiment that you're going to do will be to clarify for yourself, how much are you doing this in your life? And I promise you, this is one of the building blocks to becoming a much more powerful speaker. Because what constitutes a powerful speaker, you guys? When you really think about it, what constitutes it? Well, it's someone, A, who keeps their word, but also who can hold space for what they're saying. And if fear is driving you to fill that silence or to speak really quickly, like it was for me when I was younger, what happens? That isn't powerful, right? That makes other people uncomfortable too. So it's kind of interesting. It almost does the exact opposite, where we think that filling the space makes people comfortable. And maybe sometimes it does, but I also can tell when I'm talking to someone and they're nervously filling the space. And I would really rather they not. I just went to the dentist today, and very lovely. And I'm friendly with all the people there. Hello, how are you? And then, the hygienist was like, wanting to, just felt compelled to keep, I was just waiting for the dentist. Like, I'm meditating, like I'm fine. And I did talk to her and she was nice, but do you know what I mean? Like, it would have been perfectly fine, and I was perfectly comfortable with her not talking. I didn't feel uncomfortable. So anyway, back to you guys and what you're doing in our experiment this week is I want you to really resist filling that pregnant pause for the next 48 hours. But what you're really going to do is write down all of the situations that you found yourself in where you felt compelled to do it. Try not to do it. It's only an experiment, so if you had to do it anyway because you couldn't stop yourself, that's fine. What I want you to do is raise your awareness about how you're behaving, because so much of the time, you guys, this is an automatic way of behaving. We are on autopilot. You're not thinking mindfully about what you're saying in the elevator, right? You're just doing what you do. But I'm asking you to step back, take a minute to allow yourself to observe. And the way that you can figure this out is be dialed into your body, because you'll always get a cue from your body telling you that you feel uncomfortable or that there's a constriction of some kind, right? So be dialed into that situation that you're in, and it could be a dating situation. This is a really helpful skill to master when you're dating, because it makes you mindful of how you're being, what you're bringing, but also it will have you observe the other person in a different way. And the most important part of this is, yes, it'll make you a more powerful speaker, but it's all about what magic can happen when you are not under the illusion that you are controlling all things or that you are responsible for all things. That is life-changing. So, I hope that you enjoyed this episode this week. And if you did, please share it with people on your social media platforms, whatever they may be. I'm really interested, so I want you guys to follow up with me. And you can write, whether it's on YouTube or whether it's on the website, wherever you're watching this. Let me know if you had the courage to do the experiment and how it went. What got kicked up for you? Another thing to look at quickly is your blueprint around this. Do you have nervous talkers in your family? Did you observe this? But don't worry, all of that will be in your little downloadable step-by-step process. So thank you guys for watching, listening, and sharing. And as always, take care of you.